The Help is the first novel by American author Catherine Stockett, a native of Jackson, Mississippi. It took her 5 years to write it and 60 book agent rejection before it was finally accepted and became a bestseller in 2009. After decades of African Americans with chained and enslaved by white people, an African American woman portrayed as Mommy in Gone with the Wind, finally a novel that tells what really happened in the South in the 60s. The Help has been published in 35 countries and translated in 3 different languages, along with being made into an Oscar award-winning movie by Tate Taylor, a friend of the author, who brought it to the big screen in 2011. The movie received 5 nominations at the Golden Globes of 2012 and was nominated for 4 Academy Awards the same year. Octavia Spencer won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her interpretation of Minnie Jackson. Set in the United States Deep South in the early 1960s, The Help is a complex story of a segregated South where friendship, altruism, and redemption were offset by spite, barbary, and ignorance. The reader relives the extraordinary difficult period of complete segregation and the rise of Black rights activist Martin Luther King. The Help takes place in Jackson, the author's hometown, in a country divided in 2. On one hand, traditionalists insisting on maintaining values based on social differences and skin color, and on the other, new, asking for equality. Eugenia Skeeter Phelan is a young white woman who has recently graduated from University of Mississippi, who comes home to her family's cotton plantation, Longleaf, and finds things much more complicated than expected. Skeeter's biggest dream is to become a famous writer or journalist, but the only job she can find is writing a homemaker's column called Miss Myrna for the Jackson Journal. Skeeter knows very little about homemaking, so she asks Abilene, a friend's maid, for help. Abilene Clark is a sweet black housekeeper who raised 17 white children. Abilene knows her place in the world and how she is expected to behave. Live in the kitchen, raise a white child that sooner or later will give you orders, and do not talk until you're not spoken to. One day, Skeeter tells Abilene about her idea of writing narratives from the point of view of black maids. Abilene, initially reluctant, accepts, and soon she will find herself immersed in the project as much as Skeeter. One evening, Abilene decides to ask her best friend, Minnie Jackson, to join her during her meetings with Skeeter. Listening to the stories opens Skeeter's eyes on the inherent prejudices she was raised with. Slowly, a true friendship begins between the 3 women, a friendship that no one thought possible. Mrs. Stain, a renewed journalist in New York, after reading the initial manuscripts, is very interested in Skeeter's work and asks the young lady for more narratives accompanied by additional testimonials. Due to continuous acts of intimidation against the African American community, Skeeter can find anyone willing to tell their story. Only after the murder of Medgar Evers, a black activist, and the arrest of Yul May, Miss Hilly Holbrook's housekeeper, many maids finally decide to cooperate with Skeeter. Skeeter's book is set in the fictional town of Niceville and was published anonymously. It soon became a national bestseller, and the white women of Jackson started to recognize themselves in the character of the book. The book becomes a powerful force in giving voice to the black maids, and forces the community of Jackson to reconsider the carefully drawn line between white and black people. The big screen version differs from the book in some parts, but overall remains very faithful. Some events are not mentioned, and some characters have been changed. In the movie, the idea of writing narratives comes from Skeeter, whereas in the book, Abilene tells Skeeter that her son dreamed about becoming a writer and writing about how it was for a black to work for a white person. The relation between Miss Celia Foote and Minnie is also different in the film. The affection that the two women have for each other is not clear enough in the movie, whereas it's obvious in the book. In the movie, Skeeter's mother, Charlotte Fillen, is gentle and understanding, whereas in the book, she's quite the opposite. Stockett's character is totally closed to the point of not mentioning to her family that she is suffering from a serious disease. Furthermore, in the film, it's Skeeter's mother who tells her daughter why Constantine, her beloved maid, went away, while in the book, Abilene's tells the story. After reading the book, you expect to see a sassy Minnie. Unfortunately, this does not happen. To Minnie, even though her great interpretation, is given very little space, so the viewer does not have the opportunity to establish a relationship with the character, contrary to the book. However, the other characters reflect expectation, and the costumes take the viewer back to the 60s. The cast did a great job balancing sensitivity with great intensity and emotion. In particular, Viola Davis, the actress who played Abilene, thanks to her intense eyes that reflected the suffering of the Black community. I chose this novel because of the important issue it confronts, racism. Unfortunately, it is an issue that is still too present in today's society. Throughout the mid-1960s, many U.S. states still adhered to the so-called Jim Crow laws that legalized the harsh discrimination against Black people, denying them basic human rights. The struggle for emancipation, dignity, and affirmation of the origin of African American community was a major episode in the U.S. history.